The countdown has finished, and I'm trying to get Facebook to go live. It thinks it's live, so that's a good sign. But I don't know if it really is live. It's a mystery to us all. Okay, there it goes. It's actually live now. Hooray! It might have been live while I was saying all of that. You never know. So I hope folks are having a fabulous Thursday with fall, officially here. I feel like if fall is like 100% present now. Um, and it's like cold and dreary looking outside, which to be honest is welcome because here in Massachusetts we had what did we have? We had like 5 weeks without rain. So yay. I think I mentioned that last time. But I don't know, 5 weeks without rain seems like a lot. Kind of did it work? All right, everyone worked. Hooray. Gotta write my everyone post. I did such a good job of like writing the whole post. And then I forgot to actually write my snippet for everyone. Hey, William. Lunch with Mel. Talking about. There we go. I made my everyone post. I did it. Hey, Ronnie. All the way up there. Yeah, it's. Shoot. You told me, Ronnie, that you guys are on Alberta time, right? So you're mountain, not Pacific. So it's only 10 in the morning. All right. It's not bad. Oh yeah, I didn't. You know what? I had to go back and look, Ronnie, for that typo in Sunny. I like. I wouldn't have spotted it if you hadn't said anything. I think what it is I am fluent in typo, so if you I won't even see them. I don't see them in my own writing either, which is one of the reasons why I will never be able to work without utilizing a professional editor because like I just won't spot misspellings. And to be honest, one of the things I've discovered is that my readers don't generally spot misspellings either. What they are really good at spotting is duplicate words or missing words. They can usually pick up on those. Although missing words, they tend to miss a lot more. Like I use just-in-time readers to go over the book after the edits are all done because chances are whenever I'm editing a book, I'm going to introduce new errors. And I find that if you have 10 just-in-time readers looking at a book, chances are they won't there's going to be each one is going to find something unique that the others all miss, and only when like everyone is like repeating things do I feel like okay, we've got them all, or at least 99% of them. Hey, Emma and Jeremy and Jill, got like a nice group here today. All the different places were like up at 20 people. So hi everyone, hope you guys are having a great Thursday with a fantastic weekend lined up. This weekend for me is going to be making a door for a storage area up in Eva's workshop. And then I'm also going to be, shoot, what else am I doing this weekend? I'm going to be doing some yard work because it's been a stretch with all of the renovation stuff. The yard's it's a little bit untamed, quite frankly. I'm also going to get a really nice edger. I've decided that's going to be my gift to myself in October. Like not like just like a whip edger, but one that actually has like rotating blades that will actually like cut a really nice edge because I think that'll be crucial. So, hey Cade, hoping to find some way, hopefully some way to figure out how to pick proper audience for Facebook. What do you write, Cade? We can chat about that. The other thing I want to chat about is success as the title of this presentation. This is not a presentation. That implies way more preparation than my Thursday chats end up having. Although sometimes actually I do spend a bit of time. But usually what they are is kind of like what's on my mind after a week of working with clients. And I feel like a couple things have come to mind. One, I feel like direct sales is harder this fall than it has been in the past. That's probably something for a future talk. And I think it's the election cycle is just making ads a lot more expensive right now. I think that's affecting traffic ads less because they're already fairly cheap. So if a traffic ad goes up by 25%, and you're currently at 15 cents a click, that only brings you up to 18, 19 cents a click. And provided you have good read through and profitability, that's something you can bear pretty easily. But if you're running direct sales ads and you're selling a $20 book and your cost of sale is 15, well, a 25% increase in cost, along with the fixed costs of the Shopify site and the credit card processing, can erase your profit margin entirely. So I think it's kind of a thing. But yeah, it is tricky. Urban fantasy, vampire, shadow walkers, family drama. Um, I mean, the urban fantasy target in Facebook is actually not bad at all. You could also, I actually find with urban fantasy, my best targets tend to be TV and movie shows. So Buffy, Angel, Grimm, Lost Girl, other things like that um, tend to work pretty well. There's a whole bunch that, for whatever reason, aren't popping in my mind. But I choose all of those, then I hit the define further button or maybe narrow further, depending on what your UI says. And then I'll just narrow down by fiction books and novels, and can usually get ads working pretty well by doing that. Yeah, 24. Yeah, you're with what you write, Jeremy. 24 sounds about right for this time of year. So there's definitely that. But oh, I miss Emma. I miss what you said. I was so busy saying hi to everybody. I miss it. It's raining heavily in the UK. Is it like unusual amounts of heavily, or is it welcome to fall in the UK kind of heavy? I have a feeling that's probably what it is. So yeah, I had an interesting 10 minutes right before starting lunch with Mal as well. I'm reinstalling Windows on one of my computers, and I accidentally wiped the wrong hard drive while I was doing it. So I'm pretty sure that anything I needed was already backed up to the cloud. But I've just got like this nagging feeling now that something wasn't. So I didn't wipe. There are 3 drives. 2 of them, one of them was totally wipeable. One of them was probably wipeable, and one of them is definitely not. And luckily, I did not wipe the one that is definitely not wipeable. So at least there's that going on. Um, but yeah, I'm actually thinking it's my main gaming machine that used to be my main work machine, but now I'm just using it just for gaming because I have a separate machine for work. And I'm actually contemplating installing Linux on it and trying giving Linux gaming a shot for those of you who are game nerds. Um, but yeah, it is kind of scary too. Wait, are we talking about the heavy rain being very scary, or me accidentally wiping the wrong hard drive? I store almost everything in the cloud. Like all of my books, any client work that I do, all of that stores in the cloud. It's actually just mainly my downloads folder and a few other things I might have backed up. But I think really everything that was on that drive is games. I'm like almost positive. Anyway, but yeah, so something that's come up a bit in the last little while, and it really kind of like solidified in my mind while I was talking with a client yesterday evening actually, was like how we as authors define success. Um, Pardon me. And oftentimes I feel like we define success in ways that make it impossible to achieve success, or at least to ever get the feeling like we've achieved success. I think we can actually achieve success. We don't stop to smell the roses enough. And to a certain extent, I think this is going to be Mal getting a little bit squishy. Normally I'm like all about like, here's hard things that you can do. But this time it's a little more, it's softer, you know, in that we in modern society we're really focused on reward at completion. Everything is all about reward at completion, and a lot of that is actually driven by like the way that social media and gamification of so many things have affected us. Everything's been gamified, in- including the games we play, but beyond like the actual game itself, there's all sorts of reward mechanics in games that we play that give us dopamine hits. um, the way that TV is being done, where it's episodic, and we're always craving more to get more of those dopamine hits, so like, and then when things are done, like the TV series comes to an end, or we finish writing the book, or the vacation's over, a lot of times we actually don't feel that sense of satisfaction, because we're just like, we're just on the lookout for the next thing. And I think in many regards, we've forgotten that the journey in many scenarios is the reward. And maybe not everybody's forgotten it. Maybe it's me more than anyone else. I don't think so. Um, but I do feel like it's kind of a common thing. And because of that, in a way, it dovetails into how we don't a lot of times have a very clear idea of what success looks like, or even like what a goal is. Because success is like pretty ephemeral in and of itself. Everybody has a different definition of success, and your definition of success will change. Like yesterday in our where we're starting a new membership class or session class era epoch, I guess, next week, but we wrapped up the last one this past Wednesday, and we were talking about how oh, where was I going with this? Shoot, I derailed myself more than I meant to. Oh, I feel terrible that I completely screwed this up now because oh, it'll come back to me. It'll come back around. I know it will because it's all connected to the conversation. Anyway, it was a video by a particular guy that I wanted to reference. I suddenly couldn't remember the name of it, but like we. Oh yeah, that's right. Now, okay. So we talk about like having a perfect day sometimes when you think about what success would be like what's my success looks like, and and we think like, oh, it's this perfect day. And for many of us, it's like, I don't know, you wake up on a beach, and or maybe not on the beach. Maybe you wake up at a cabin near the beach. Probably waking up on the beach probably means you had too much to drink the night before. Um, you wake up, somewhere in a domicile of some sort, where the domicile's on the beach, perhaps, or maybe it's like in the woods, and you look out and you see a vista of mountains, or maybe it's like on a ranch in Montana, looking out over the prairie, low rolling hills, or something like that. Um, and we think about it like that, and then we have this goal in mind that if we don't achieve that thing, we don't have success. Um, but this way of framing it that we talked about yesterday was actually about like if you could have a day that you had to groundhog day for the rest of your life, what would it be? Where would it be? What would you be doing? That sort of thing. And that was an interesting sort of way to put it, because my first thought was like I had to get over the horror of groundhog daying a day for the rest of my life. But by the same token, I I did think about like what that could actually look like, because I don't think I would want it to be purely leisure. I would actually want accomplishment and to do things and to help people and whatnot. So I it was an interesting way to frame it, and I did realize I actually would want some work in that day, and work of different types and whatnot. The tricky thing is you might feel like you're spinning your wheels, but the metaphor only goes so far. After a while, you have to think about like, okay, now that I've framed this as doing this sort of thing or living this kind of day over and over again, now imagine it with actual progression, and you can kind of move on from there. Um, but along the along those lines, I think that dovetails into success, because with this vision of success in the future, um, we create kind of an unattainable thing for ourselves. And it's just sort of like we imagine a future where there's no stress and no concerns and everything is fine. And so while we might imagine a setting that is good, really what's behind that is that feeling that we're looking for. And there is no future where there's no stress and everything's fine. There might be periods of life that have that, um, but there's no like ongoing period of life that has that. And so if you define the future as this never ending stress free stretch of time, you're always going to be sorry if you define success in the future as that. I mean, you're always going to be disappointed because it's always going to end. Um, and and I think while we know that intellectually, sometimes in our heart we still sort of set that expectation. And what that really ends up doing is making us feel like we're failures forever, because we never reach that magical point where everything is perfect forever, and then we judge ourselves by that. And we also often look at other people and think that maybe they have reached that, and it's like, newsflash, they haven't, right? And we know that no one lives a carefree, stress-free life forever. And like I said, you might get pockets of that here and there, but that's not the way that life goes forever. So I think we need to like stop judging ourselves by that and setting some realistic goals. The other thing I think that can happen with us a lot as authors is we sort of imagine that there's this author nirvana state where you reach a self-sustaining period where you don't have to work anymore and your books just sell and you just make money. And that, of course, leads to that idea of this no stress future where you wake up in an ideal situation every day and do whatever you want and don't have a care in the world. Um, but like, there's no scenario either. There's no author that just makes acres of money forever without releasing new books. You know, even the people who get movie and TV deals see peaks and valleys in their income. Um, and of course, the smart ones are going to invest and save and make their money work for them so that they don't feel the valleys as bad. But other ones might not be doing that. And they might actually find that life is a lot harder because of that. And so I think we sort of have to disabuse ourselves of this notion that there's some sort of steady state that you can achieve that just goes on forever. Like even I might, to a certain extent, be perpetuating that myth because I wrote 130 books and now live off the revenue from the ads that I run for those 130 books. But even for me, it is diminishing over time. And while I've made it 3 years without having to write a new book right now, I know that eventually the author income will diminish, and I'll have to do something new, or shift, or figure out a way to repackage or translate or something. Right? Like there's it's always going to take work, or even that just the advertising landscape becomes harder and less profitable, and so my net drops or something like that. So we do have to think about like what success looks like, and then how long we can reasonably expect the fruits of that success to last for. All right, I'm going to catch myself up on comments because you guys had a few here. You're very welcome, by the way, Cade. I missed that. Dun, 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 dun. Speaking of gamify, you have leaderboards on your Writing Wives school website that makes me want to level up. I know, I saw those. I'm like, oh dear. I don't know if that's the right thing or not. I noticed I was level 3 and I was like, oh, I made it to level 3. And I'm like, do I really care though? Maybe we can disable that. I don't know. The mountain view thing sounds like the view off my back deck. That sounds really nice, James. Kate says, oh, I think my first book launch would be amazing. The reward of that was incredible. That sounds really good, Cade. That's awesome. Yasmin says, I've been through so many phases of my career in the past 30 years. It's like being in the ocean. Sometimes it's smooth sailing, but there's always going to be a storm somewhere on the horizon. I like that. Yeah, that is true. You're right. Like even if it's the winds are coming from behind and pushing you where you need to go, that's not always going to be the case. Jeremy says, if I have enough money coming from my books to be able to put money into savings and investments after my expenses, including health insurance, I'd be happy with that, just to write books and be able to travel. Yeah. And I think that's a good thing. And you have to sort of decide, like, what does that actually look like? What does that number look like? Because I think a big thing that we do is a lot of times we view success as better than now. And we don't make it concrete. And even a lot of times, even goals like I want to be able to put money into savings and travel is also not concrete, because then once you can do that, it becomes, well, now I want to travel to places I can't afford to travel now, and I want to put more money into savings. And sometimes we can kind of like we can get ourselves into a bad mental place with that sort of thing by thinking like, oh, I want to go to Disney and stay at the Grand Floridian for a month or something like that. Maybe not a month. Actually sounds kind of boring after a while, but you get my point, right? Like it's like we not by not having concrete goals, we can just fall into this moreism thing where you can always have more. You can always have more travel. You can always have more money in savings. You can always have more relaxation time. And setting some actual goals for ourselves can be important. Another thing that we can really do too is setting. That's cool. I like that you have that. If you have that, Jeremy. Success is a moving target. That is true, Alex. Yeah. Pippa says, I'm experiencing my first taste of success. It's exhilarating after all the failure. It is exhilarating But would you also not agree that it's kind of terrifying in a way because you also worry about it ending? Um, I found that I mean there would I think the initial rush is pretty good, but after a while you actually if you're not careful, you can you can find yourself fearing the loss of that success, which can be kind of dangerous. Not that I want to like bring on your parade or anything like that. And if you're not having that particular issue, that is awesome. So um, more power to you. But yeah, it is nice to be successful. I think the nicest thing for me when I really started to get success was the idea that at any given time there was someone reading one of my books, and I thought that was just the coolest thing ever that that sort of thing could happen. Um, after, you know, after there being a dozen readers reading my books, the idea that like at any given time there was at least one person reading one of my books was pretty wild. Um, I agree, Kelly. It is good to acknowledge achieving the goals and making sure you notice and acknowledge if your goalposts change. And that's why I think as authors, a lot of times we almost need to write things down. Like this is a measure of success I expect I want to have, and then to celebrate that, and even just to celebrate the journey. I think part of it's because being an author is can kind of be a lonely slog sometimes, right? You're by yourself working at your thing. While it's just you doing it, there's no there's no accolades or anything like that. It's not only until you get to done and you publish it that you actually get some of those accolades. And we start to like devalue the joy that can actually come from writing because we start to view it as more of a chore. I think a lot of authors a lot of times will get to a point where they like having written, but they don't like writing quite as much as they used to. And I think a lot of times is because um, once you start treating like a business, the joy that's in the making can diminish. And I think it's good to remember that that's not really where we want to be. We want to have our joy in the making because if we have our joy in the making of our books, people will enjoy reading them more. Um, it has been a while, Kelly. I'm really glad to see you too. It's really nice. A friend of mine on the East Coast is infecting her Walmart with my books. Apparently, I've taken over two departments, and it was kind of cool and didn't feel real. I need to know more about what infecting a Walmart with your books looks like because that sounds pretty cool. Um, and Jill mentions how we need like mission statements. We need to think about things like what does our ideal reader look like. There's a whole bunch of sort of businessy things we can do like that that I think is really important. And not only that, I think we need to set goals per series and strategies per series. Um, and then we need to do that pretending we're a separate human being than the actual writer as well, because you don't want to just make your writing clinical. But like for example, if you're writing, let's take what I did since it's my best. It's the example I know best. It's not actually my I don't know if it's my best example or not. Um, but so I wrote a lot of like really high concept, far future sci-fi, where a lot of the main characters were like lived on starships and traveled around a lot, and were by and large in control of their own destinies, and that they were sort of like they there was a big war going on and they were like at the highest level looking over the entire conflict and that sort of thing, and everything that they were dealing with was like the biggest plot, the most important problem kind of thing. But I knew that there's people who don't like reading that, and in some cases it can kind of be exhausting to read that sort of thing. So what I did instead as well is I wrote series about very different parts of the war, and it'd be like the same thing about like you have one movie about Winston Churchill in his bunker, doing stuff, and another movie like Saving Private Ryan, where it's just some guys trying to get across a stretch of terrain to get a guy, kind of thing, like those really up close and personal stories. And so I wrote books like that, um, targeting an entirely different kind of reader, the kind of reader who wanted to read like ground pounding mech combat where the future was dirty and lived in. Um, and pull in. But my goal was not just to write that for writing that sake. My goal was to write that, grab all of those readers, and draw them into the rest of my backlist. So it was a strategy around how I would actually do that, how I would capture these readers, pull them in, get them reading even more of my books, um, beyond just an overarching synergy or even dyssynergy, even like a difference. Like it was a deliberate strategy that I had in the way that I drove the stories, even in two separate series at the same time, bringing them together at a crucial point where my characters who are part of the small plot line, up close and personal stories, made a really big difference in the big story, and then sort of got moved sort of into the orbit of that larger story, but then kept them dealing with the size of problem they normally dealt with. Um, that was a a really deliberate thing, and that's the kind of thing you can do when you think about like what's my goal for this particular series, and it'd be like to attract an entirely new readership and then draw them into everything else. I also accidentally, I don't know how I did this, the ground pounding, feet in the mud combat like gritty combat series also accidentally became sci-fi romance. So that was sort of an added bonus. I didn't even realize that people consider to be sci-fi romance until a book talker put up a video saying listing her 5 favorite sci-fi romances, and I was in one of them. And then she got my character's mech helmet tattooed on her arm, and I'm like, okay, apparently I did a bit of that. Then I look back and I realized, wow, a significant portion of this story is the girl gets kidnapped. The guy goes, the guy who was interested in her, they weren't really even dating yet, goes after her, and his name is Chase. So it reads like it was really on the nose, and I did it on purpose, and it wasn't at all. Um, she's promoting my books to her friends and coworkers. Oh, okay. I thought she was like just secreting it onto shelves or something like that, in the Walmart. But that's awesome that she's doing that. That's really cool. So I'm curious, when you guys write a series and release a series, do you set a goal? Do you have a series strategy for how you're going to write different books in the series, who they're going to appeal to, how you might use them to broaden your reach and pull people into your backlist? Is it deliberate? Are you strategizing about that, or do you do it at all, or is it kind of like you strike when you see an opportunity, but you're not like planning that sort of thing for the future? I'm kind of curious how that goes. Yeah, Emma. Yeah, in hindsight, it definitely is romance, and all of my books have some amount of romance in them because I can't write a book without romance. It just humans do romantic things, and humans are attracted to other humans. It's a thing that happens. There are two of my books without romance, and they were the hardest two books I've ever had to write. Um, One of them was especially hard because it wasn't supposed to be a romance series at all. um, the main character met this other girl, so it was a female main character, and the whole series was about this woman's downfall. I needed to turn her into a villain, um, and she was a hero in prior books. I had to like give her her villain arc, um, and then she fell in love with this other woman, and I didn't mean for that to happen. It just did. It was just a logical path for these characters to go down. It's what the characters wanted to do in the moment. But I'm like, well, crap. I took this character that I need to turn into a villain, um, and I gave her this lover who was redeeming her and saving her, and it wasn't working. So I had to like systematically destroy them, and I had my main character accidentally kill her lover. And then that was actually great because that gave me the catalyst to push her right over the edge. So yay, go me. But that next book, I tell you, the one that after she killed her lover, couldn't have any romance in there because the character, it would have been true to the character if she just found someone else and started banging them or something like that. Like she had to, she had to just lose herself. So that was one of my two non-romance books. Oh, there's so many comments in here. Let's see. Emma said she didn't before, but she does now. I love to see that. Yeah, sci-fi romance does just happen sometimes. You're absolutely right, Kelly. Also, I feel like Kelly, like growing up, half of the sci-fi books we read would have been classified as sci-fi romance now. Like everything Anne McCaffrey did would have been sci-fi romance today. Gina says, I actually didn't mean to make it a series. Now I wrote my fave time period, and for those who love it, it has the romance, but it's not a strict historical romance. I got you. It became such a serious family saga, so each is sit on a sibling. That's awesome. Is it doing well for you, Gina? It sounds fun. Pippa says, I have a cozy mystery series and have a set of murders in various scenarios, including a theater, a coven, a restaurant, a wedding, and now a reality TV series. That's interesting. I'm trying to appeal to people who like those environments. I like that. Could you do Would you think it would support us like spin-offs too if you really need to like dig into a particular setting? That could be an interesting thing too. Oh, it's a bummer, Kelly. I'll see you later. Maybe you'll catch the replay. Yasmin said, when I start a series, and I only write series, I go in with the character, their name, and at least one sidekick slash very basic idea. I'm an intuitive writer, so the rest builds to the writing. I do that too, actually. I don't outline. I write into the dark. But I still like know what the series is gonna where it's gonna go. I think I call it the name I want to give it. I think I actually I still am batting around the idea of like writing a book or doing a webinar series or something about this called Writer Put Your Pants Back On. I mean, that's my tentative name. I might not actually call it that. But the idea being um, having a North Star. So I kind of want to call it North Star writing, where you have this guiding star that you're going to keep yourself pointed towards in general, but the path you take to get there can wander around a bunch. And so that's the thing I do with my series is every one of them has a North Star. I have a place it's going. Um, Sometimes I don't know exactly what that is. Sometimes the North Star can change. That has absolutely happened. It like got behind, was behind a mountain. I couldn't see anymore, and I found some other star. Went over that way. That does happen, but um, I still like have an idea. You know, when I create my setting, I think it mostly comes from the setting. That's sort of what frames um, the direction I want the series to go from a business perspective. James says, I write the book I'm most excited about. Yeah, that was definitely something that we talked about, talking about your books, James. I figure if I'm excited, the reader will be excited too. Sometimes they are, sometimes not, but at least you enjoy the process. That's a good way to look at it. You know, if one of your goals for writing a book or writing a series is that you enjoy the process, I think that's actually a really good goal and not something to be discounted at all. I also do feel like whenever I'm talking to authors about, you know, parts of the book where they might be stuck and whatnot, I'm like, are you bored with the story right here? Do you find the story boring? And if the answer is yes, I'm like, your readers probably will too. So I think we need to back it up a bit and figure out where things went wrong. Um, that's awesome, Gina. Congrats. Closest I do is to make sure my secondary characters are built up enough that they can support side stories or prequels. But I know I have a series before the first book is drafted. Well, that's, yeah, definitely for me as well. But that's because I only write series. Emma says, I created a mafia world and I finished the main family story. I'm branching out to different families who are loyal to my female leader. I don't necessarily feature my original characters. They're all linked in some way. Something that could be worth considering. I don't know if your main, I don't know if we've actually talked about this, Emma. I don't know if your main story series is finished. Um, but if you are going to branch a series out, it makes a lot of sense to start those branches before the main series is done. Because if you're going to be, you know, you've got like your flagship series, for lack of a better term, running, and it's the one that's sort of the anchor point that everything else branches off of. If you don't start creating those branches, um, like if you don't actually like go off on those branches until you reach the end of the main series, you have a harder time getting people into those things because there's no points at which they can dovetail back in with the main series, because that's additional points where you can try to draw people into those additional series. If the first branching off point didn't suck people down that second path, well, when those characters come back for a little bit, then people might get drawn in then to see what's going on uh, with those characters. The other thing is that not every one of them hits. So if you do them all in order, if you do a linear pathway with that, and one of the series doesn't hit, then you can have some trouble. Whereas if you spark off a couple different tangential series and one of them doesn't hit that well, your flagship series is still going, so you're still going to be okay. So that's another thing to consider when you're doing that. I don't know if it's possible for you to do at this moment, but might be useful for the future or for someone else who's doing things there. Um, but the great thing too is it allows you to do Easter eggs. Your hardcore readers will love Easter eggs. Like having anytime a person can like have the special knowledge, they feel good about that. That's actually apparently the psychology behind flat earthers. And people believe in the Illuminati and all that. It actually just sort of boils down to people wanting to feel like they're part of something special and unique. So that's actually where that all comes from. Oh, that's awesome, Emma. Good. Writing Into the Dark by Wesley Smith. Yeah, I've read that too, actually. It's a good one as well. Made a number of videos for intuitive writers. I missed that. Yasmin says, I actually made a number of videos for intuitive writers since there's so little guidance out there. Um, oh, that's good. I didn't know Becca had written one on that. That's really cool. Maybe I'll check. I don't know. I almost like I want to check out other people's things sometimes to make sure that I don't just copy what they did, but at the same time, I'm afraid if I check it out, that's actually what's going to cause me to copy what they did. So I'll think about that. Deborah says, my current series was only supposed to be 4 books, but those books kept selling so well that now I'm pulling out second characters and giving them their own stories. That is awesome. I love it. That's and the great thing too is that if you don't need to pull them out to start their own stories, then you don't. But if you do, then they're there and you can do it. And that's a really awesome place to be. So that's one element of like planning out a series and thinking about success. Another one is just like how many sales are you going to get? What's your launch going to look like? Thinking about things like that. And in some regards, almost like from a launch standpoint, it could be like just setting up all the things you need to do to launch the book and making sure you do all of them. I think it was actually James and I that were talking. And he mentioned he has a checklist for everything he has to do on his books because there's just so many things to do. And that could be like one of your goals for the series, like doing all the things that you should do, getting some more swaps, writing the reader magnet first so that it flows really nicely into the main story, having deleted scenes that you can use for building your reader magnet. There could be all sorts of things like that you could do as part of your goal setting for the series. The goal setting doesn't need to be just purely financial. And the thing that I wanted to mention earlier that I think is that still makes sense is around the idea of enjoying the journey. So this is one of the reasons why I love gardening a lot. It's because like with gardening, especially if you're not gardening for food, then the journey is actually the thing that matters. And even if you garden for food, a lot of plants just look pretty, and seeing all the fruit on them is really nice. So I find the journey of gardening to be rewarding in so many different places. You get everything all set up and you plant your seeds and you get them watering and you see those first few sprouts come up is really, really rewarding. And then you transplant them and they start to thrive, and that's rewarding. And you put them in the ground and you see them just shoot up like rockets. And then of course the first fruit appears, and you might do a harvest, another harvest. All of that sort of thing is rewarding. Then you get the basket of vegetables and fruit that you take a picture of and post on Facebook because that's what you do. And it has so many places along the road that are rewarding, and then you get to do it all again the next year. And I like to think of my writing like that. There's so many steps in it that I end up finding to be rewarding, and not just be thinking about the harvest only. Because if I just only think about the harvest, and then something happens, all the joy that I could have felt along the way is sapped, and I don't get to feel it. Like bugs or a storm or who knows what, or a drought happens. That I don't want to rely entirely just on the harvest at the end for the joy that I get from my writing process. So I like to set goals inside as well. Like even sometimes I'll say things like, I mean, sometimes it's really ephemeral where I'm like, come up with a brilliant reason why these characters doing this thing actually matters and connect it back into the rest of the story. Because I do that. I have so many characters and POVs in my books. I'm like, I know people want to read about these characters and they'll enjoy reading about them just even if they're here and it's kind of slice of life, but I'd really like to have a way for what they do to really matter. All right. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, Emma says, you said this to me this week, and I have a tendency to set my goals low because of fear of failure. Yeah, we did talk about that this week. You're right, Emma. It came up a lot this week with a lot of people, actually, which is one of the reasons why it's on my mind. And yeah, I think that's the thing that a lot of authors will do. They soft launch and they don't put in all the effort, because if you don't put in all the effort on the launch, then if you failed, it was just like, well, I didn't do all the things. That's why I failed. And you might have a reason like I didn't have the time, or I want to put my effort into this other thing. And I equate it to what the trap I fall into when I do renovations in the house. A lot of times there will be a little bit of trim that I don't actually get to, because if I don't do that piece of trim or finish like that corners baseboards or something like that, then it's not done, and it still could be perfect in the future. But if I do it and I screw it up, then it's done and it's imperfect, and I just have to live with that. But at the same time, you end up living in this state of never giving it your best because you feel like you might fail. But at the same time, like, is it better to give your best and fail and learn and then do better next time than to never try at all and fail because of that? Because if you never try at all, then you never get past that first step, or never, I shouldn't say never try at all, never try fully, never give it your all. Um, if you never do that, you can never get to that next step of getting better after that. And then after that, and after that, you just are always going to sit sort of at this starting point when it comes to launches in this case, like I was talking about. So it's something to think about when we let our mindset kind of hold us back like that. It says, I've read Writing in the Dark and I enjoyed it. I'll buy the Becca Syme book now. It looks fantastic. Sometimes I get depressed with people's attitudes to my way of writing. I feel there's a lot of dissing from plotters who simply don't get that there's another way. I agree, Pippa. It's sort of treated like plotting is the proper way to do it, and that eventually we all grow up and plot. And that's really not true. You know, like most of the time, if I try plotting a book, that's what makes me not be able to write the book, because then I know what happens and I'm bored. You know, and then I have to throw the plot out and do something unexpected to actually enjoy the process. Um, so yeah, I'm very much a fan of the writing into the dark, or discovery, or like I call it, North Star writing. I do like the concept of North Star, by the way, because it helps you not write yourself into a corner as much. And there's kind of some tactics for that too. But yeah, I think there needs to be more support for people who write into the dark. I'm back. It was weird. The stream just died. It told me that I wasn't connected to the internet, except I still was. Um, Man, I was on a roll there too. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, I was talking about how, discovery writing, writing into it, the dark, pantsing, whatever it might be, called. You can do it well, and you can do it not so well. And like in the actual like constructing of scenes themselves, and there's like, if you do it a lot, eventually you get a lot better at doing it right the first time. So I do feel like a lot of times when people plot, they know who's going to be in the scene, so they might set things up a little bit better at first. And if you're pantsing, you kind of realize halfway through that a certain person should be in the scene. I think that can happen regardless, to be honest. But I do feel like there are tactics for actually doing a better job at pantsing, and writing yourself into a corner less. So I think I want to cover that sort of thing too. Um, I'm glad I'm back too, Deb. Man, it's funny. Everybody's like, I'm glad it's you because my computer sucks today or my internet sucks today. That's actually kind of funny. But yeah, so I think it'd be a worthwhile thing to do. And I don't know that I have too much else to say. I was kind of wrapping up. So hopefully some people stuck around for the last little stretch. But I do really feel strongly about us as a community, as authors, being more intentional about like setting goals and using goal setting as a way to reward ourselves along the way, and to remind ourselves to smell the roses. I think that will make, especially as it becomes more of a career for people who haven't done that yet. I think people who have made it a career kind of understand how anything can become a job after a while, and I mean like a job in a bad way. Um, but there are ways of like keeping that at bay, and some of that can be like strategies to remember to smell the roses. I think it's really important to keep this fun and enjoyable, and also to attach your joy in writing to the storytelling and not the monetary side. I don't know if it's entirely possible to ever do that completely, but I do think it's important to keep that the joy connected to the writing to be really, really strong. Because the success of your writing, the success of any given series, your book sales, your reads, all of that will go up and down. And a lot of times it'll be entirely out of your control. So if your joy is tied entirely to that, it will always diminish because over time, what you've written in the past will diminish. It'll be read less. It'll be your ads for it will be less effective. And if your joy is all in the result and not in the doing, well, now writing that next series to bolster sales and whatnot gets harder because you've disconnected yourself from the joy of the actual writing, and you're sitting there staring at your KDP numbers, wishing that the book you wrote 7 years ago was doing better when maybe it's just not, or the level of effort in making it do better would be too high compared to the level of effort in writing a new book. Or you can't financially just pump enough money into it for ads or something like that. Like there's a lot of scenarios where that could come into play. So, keeping that joy alive will serve you well in the future when you make this a career. All right. Yeah, I think we oftentimes do, Cade. And just having written a book and getting it out there is in and of itself a monumental accomplishment. Less than 1% of the population ever actually does that. Everybody says like, "Oh, I'd love to write a book someday," but how many people really do it? Right? Like it's actually not super common. All right. I will think about that, Halana. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Jeremy says something I've struggled with and been working on. Seeing a series not sell will definitely hurts my emotional state and productivity. Yeah. Especially if you're a high achiever, like if you're taking the Clifton strengths. Because if you can kind of get high achiever burnout. You're still a high achiever, but you don't want to work on things that don't give you the results that you want. So you kind of have to shift what the achievement actually is in your mind. And it takes work to do that. It's so easy when you finish one book to throw yourself in the next without taking the time to appreciate what you created. And that's something I make a point of doing now. I remembering what I've achieved is amazing. Yes, absolutely. What you've just described is the most depressing thing I've ever heard. Do you mean, James, about how eventually it becomes a job if you let it? I don't think you've done that. I'm actually really impressed by how you're rolling, because I don't think you've had that happen. But I think for a lot of people, writing just becomes a job after a while, and not letting that happen is really important. Yeah, okay, that's what it was. Yeah, number one achiever and number 3 accomplishment. Yeah, that definitely could be a thing. Yeah, that can be a struggle. Well, the good news though, James, is that it doesn't have to be that way. So, um, the maintaining the joy in the writing is entirely possible. Just for some people, it takes a little bit more work than others. Not because of the quality of your writing or anything like that, but more just because of just our mindsets and our life situations, perhaps. But this has been good. I really enjoyed this chat. It's actually really nice for me to have conversations sometimes that aren't about mechanics of advertising and marketing or the mechanics of writing, and kind of talk more about this stuff, because I feel really strongly about it, and I think I've got a decent amount of experience in a lot of these things, so I'm glad to be able to share them with you guys. But I am going to jet. It's time to get ready for the afternoon, and despite this being lunch with Mal has not actually had her lunch yet, so that needs to happen. But I look forward to seeing all of you next Thursday. And for many of you that are here are part of our new memberships that are kicking off next month. So some of you are starting. I'll see you next Wednesday, and some of you I'll see the following Wednesday, depending which program you're in. So that will be great. And then for those of you who are here who are in the advanced Facebook ad class, I'll see you tomorrow morning as well. So I'll see lots of you around. Thanks for coming, everybody. It has been great for me too. I'll see you all later. Have a fabulous weekend as well.